Welcome back, folks. I'm DJ Anna. Hope you had a good lunch break and you're ready and eager for this evening's activities. But we can't start just yet. It's time for another joke. Since we just came back from lunch, let me give you this one. How did the computer eat its lunch? Anybody? How did the computer eat its lunch? In megabytes. I must say I'm truly excited for the first ever Small Island Developing States IGF. The focus of the inaugural SIDS IGF is to establish a platform and ongoing process where SIDS can become involved and share experiences regarding issues of internet policy and the digital economy. We're also going to be creating a globally visible platform for engagement and consensus building for SIDS internet governance. It's also to highlight and seek solutions for the critical issues facing SIDS from the Caribbean, Pacific, and aims in the digital economy, and identify appropriate governance, procedural, and operational mechanisms to effectively address common issues and objectives. We now invite the following speakers to deliver their opening remarks for the SIDS IGF opening ceremony. The Honorable Simon Kofe, Minister for Justice, Communications and Foreign Affairs, Tuvalu. Honorable Minister Deepak Balgobin, Minister of Information Technology, Communication and Innovation for Mauritius, and Amandeep Singh Gill, United Nations Envoy on Technology from the United States. Welcome to our speakers. I hand it over to you.
Honorable leaders and ministers from the Pacific, the Caribbean and Africa, distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Talofa and warm Pacific greetings from Tuvalu. It is an honor to be invited to present the keynote address for this, the first SIDS Internet Governance Forum. I extend my thanks to the organizing committee and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union for hosting this amazing and groundbreaking event. As SIDS, we are often recognized as behind the times with regard to telecommunications. We are seen as suffering from low connectivity, expensive internet, and slow proliferation of communication technology. At the same time, technological developments worldwide have pushed us to ramp up our ICT capacity and internet governance and become increasingly intertwined in today's interconnected world. When we have the necessary resources, SIDS are also often gifted with the ability to move swiftly towards technological adoption, given our small size and lower population levels. I believe all SIDS have become innovators in this process, whether by choice or through circumstances. In Tuvalu, we just recently fully connected all of our outer islands to satellite internet due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to prepare for possible lockdowns and virtual meetings. The pandemic was the push we needed to prioritize and drive internet connectivity. I know my colleagues in SIDS worldwide are also pursuing strategies towards ICT-driven development, rapidly connecting and upgrading technology and services. However, as SIDS, we do not often have the opportunity to come together to share our initiatives, our challenges, and our achievements with ICT and internet governance. And I see this SIDS IGF as an amazing opportunity for fruitful and constructive dialogue. Challenges faced in Tuvalu may, for example, provide lessons for our friends in the Caribbean, while achievements from our friends in Tonga can also provide new ideas for colleagues in different parts of the world. As SIDS, we can adopt an organized and structured approach to internet governance and ICT-driven development if we work together. Last year in Tuvalu, my ministry launched our Future Now project. The project is aimed at preparing today to secure our future against the most dire impacts of climate change. One of the initiatives we are pursuing involves creating a digital nation to preserve a digital copy of Tuvalu in the event that our land is lost due to climate change and sea level rise. Through these initiatives, we are following a two-tiered approach. First, we are digitizing all government services to ensure that Tuvalu's government infrastructure remains intact, even if we are displaced due to climate change. This is a major task for internet governance in Tuvalu because we have to develop guidelines and rules for how to handle digital services, both if we remain in Tuvalu and if we are displaced. This is a whole of government initiative prompted by climate change, but also aimed at bettering the lives of our citizens in all scenarios. Internet governance that accounts for our vulnerabilities to climate change and disaster, while also incorporating mainstream goals for ICT-driven developments, is perhaps one of the unique aspects of our experience as SIDS with ICT. Second, through our Digital Nation initiative, we are creating a digital twin of Tuvalu that will preserve the appearance and topography of our nation as it is now in the digital space. This interactive digital Tuvalu will also be able to project realistic forecasts of how sea level rise will affect the country. This is a groundbreaking idea that has won widespread support from many of our partners, including GoDaddy and Amazon. Creating a digital twin of Tuvalu guarantees that a version of Tuvalu, as it is now, will always exist, even if we eventually lose our land territory. It is also a clear signal to the world of how real the climate threat is to us. We feel we must create a digital copy of our nation now because of our real fear that Tuvalu will not exist in the future. The idea of digital twinning is one we feel all low-lying and island countries should consider. It is a public good project that can bring us together with some of the most powerful players in the ICT sector to demonstrate and protect against the impacts of climate change. There are also many internet governance issues we have come across in taking the groundbreaking step of twinning Tuvalu that we should discuss as SIDS groupings. What are the intellectual property issues associated with creating a digital twin? Can our private sector partners who create our digital twin claim ownership of it? Can our digital twins provide a digital territory that we can use to assert our statehood in the event that our own physical territory is lost? As SIDS, these are all issues in ICT development that we are uniquely equipped to discuss, especially as we look for innovative ways to use technology as a means towards climate resilience. However, I must stress that no matter how we adopt technology and ICT to ensure climate resilient development, we must always utilize a values-based approach. We must ensure that technology solution accounts for and promote the unique cultural values of all our countries. Tuvalu, for example, is a communal and community-based society founded on the Tuvaluan concept of kaitasi, or shared ownership. We value our physical interactions with our extended families and island and faith-based communities. This communal style of living is the foundation of our cultural values and unique Tuvaluan perspective on life. While ICT has the power to bring communities together online, it can also isolate people and threaten communal values. In a values-based approach to ICT, we must emphasize the commonalities between ICT development and our cultures, utilizing ICT to strengthen rather than undermine our values. This is the only way that ICT can truly contribute to climate resilient development, innovative adoption, and peace. It cannot simply drive development or combat climate change. It must empower our communities to be the best version of themselves. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for the generous invitation to speak as part of today's opening ceremony. And I wish the best of luck in your discussions. And I hope you can remember the importance of these discussions to nations like Tuvalu. Thank you.
Excellencies, colleague ministers, representative of the United Nations, all protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are across the globe. On behalf of the people of the island of Mauritius, allow me to express my warmer thanks and gratitude to the Caribbean Telecommunication Union for honoring me as a keynote speaker at this inaugural Internet Governance Forum for Small Island Developing States. It is indeed a pleasure to be amongst you today for this opening ceremony centered around the Internet governance priorities for the ICT driven development. Ladies and gentlemen, the importance of ICT drive development worldwide cannot be disputed, and it has become the engine par excellence for socio-economic development that could benefit all sections of our people in an inclusive manner. This is true for small island states, as ICT is known for its seamless and empowerment features. It is reckoned that SIDS are particularly at risk with regards to the impact of climate change, like the rise of the sea level and more frequent and increasingly potent national and natural disasters. And it is in this spirit that the SIDS accelerated modalities of action, the Samoa pathway, has developed in 2014 to provide a comprehensive framework of action to support the sustainable development of SIDS countries. The commitments of the SAPOA pathway have become even more pressing today and extend further to integrate SIDS in the regional and the global markets. This is the point where the most difficult challenges are encountered. Due to our remoteness from the rest of the world, we SIDS countries experience difficulties in accessing goods and in participating in global value chains in a more meaningful manner. Ladies and gentlemen, by nature of the small populations, restrictive land sizes, and the isolation of our land masses from the rest of developed countries, SIDS economies are significantly vulnerable, and the more so when it comes to the digital economy. Remoteness stands out as one of the major challenges of all SIDS that needs to be addressed for our inclusive growth perspective. And one way of keeping SIDS countries in sync with the rest of the world is through a resilient internet connectivity. The foundations of a sound and healthy digital economy rest heavily on its internet connectivity, both inland and at the international level. Connecting to more than one submarine cable has the net effect on enhancing resilience of connectivity and stimulating competition among service providers, which further brings down communication cost and attracts investment, improves the quality of life of people, and bring about inclusiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, streamlining trade flows across the world and making of it a global village cannot be achieved if SIDS are left aside. In general, the digital economy in SIDS countries is still at an immature stage as compared to developing countries. And the digital transformation of SIDS will not happen with the sole effort of these countries alone. In the first place, there is a need to provide support to SIDS through appropriate governance institutions, particularly in the area of e-commerce and digital trade. For this to happen, the empirical enablers of the digitalization process have to be established upstream. A number of prerequisites have to be put in place. Firstly, internet has to be made more affordable. Earlier I mentioned that one way in which this can be achieved is through use of competitive connectivity. Secondly, for an effective e-commerce ecosystem to be established in SIDS, alongside the internet infrastructure, we require a logistic infrastructure. This consists of all traffic routes such as rails, roads, air and waterways for goods and services, including warehousing and control systems, as well as handling facilities, including security measures. Thirdly, for a digital ecosystem to operate in an efficient and secure manner, a sound regulatory framework is required. Not all SIDS have modern legislations on electronic transactions, cybercrime, privacy and data protection, and protection of customers online. Due to specificities of SIDS countries, the policies and regulatory models for large countries cannot always be conveniently replicated to SIDS. Supporting SIDS in drafting adequate legal framework can foster digital economy development. Fourth, digital literacy of small users is another challenge that has to be appropriate and appropriately addressed for the successful take-up and inclusive use of digital services. Women and girls, senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and small businesses should be at par with each other and all the players in the digital ecosystem. Lastly, another major challenge that awaits SIDS in the shaping of the ICT landscape is the availability of skilled resources in this particular field. The demand is particularly felt with the adoption of new and emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, big data, and so on. Given the small population size of SIDS, the services of foreign experts usually have to be facilitated in a more pronounced manner by international institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, on the base of the digital ecosystem is laid out, the benefit will spill over across all businesses, all the sectors of the SIDS, more particularly for the promotion of tourism, which appears as a major activity of our economy. New business opportunities and employment will also emerge to further drive the digital transformation of SIDS economies. The adoption of digital technologies will undoubtedly have a positive impact on the public service delivery as well. Internet governance is not only about the mere administration and regulation of the internet and ICT services, but also in ensuring that an inclusive use of them is being made. And for SIDS to take an active and inclusive part in the globalization of business activities, our concerns have to be reckoned through instances such as UN bodies, World Trade Organization, and International Telecommunication Union, ITU. And by the way, let me take the opportunity of this forum to inform my colleagues of SID countries present today and listening to me that Mauritius has submitted its candidature for the election of the ITU Council for Region D, that is Africa, for the term 23-26, and is hereby seeking your support and your help for the forthcoming ITU Plenipotentiary Conference 2022. I wish to conclude here to reiterate my thanks to the organizers and the sponsors of this event. Mauritius, being a small island in the Indian Ocean, as a SIDS country, we have achieved a numerous pathway and the road is still long to go. We have launched our 5G services. We have fully fibered the whole country. We have an internet penetration of 127%. We have a mobile connectivity of 151%. In terms of cybersecurity and cybercrime, we have brought new laws in Parliament which are aligned with the Budapest Convention, and we are ranked first in Africa for the cybercrime and cybersecurity section by ITU. We are also ranked first in Africa by the Global Innovation Index in terms of innovation. So small Mauritius is appealing to you, my dear friends, to support us in our candidature for the ITU, so that as a SID member, we could bring our contribution in the International Telecommunication Union. And I am personally of the opinion that a multi-stakeholder forum like this one is ideal challenge, and it's a good channel for pushing the digital agenda and priorities of SIDS countries forward. Mauritius is a partner. We would like to work together with you. We'd like to share our experience and our knowledge, and also learn from our fellow countries in the SIDS. On this note, let me wish all the participants fruitful deliberation, and I thank you very much for your kind attention, and I say hello from Mauritius.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you from New York. Allow me to thank the organizers, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, and the organizing committee for this invitation. And my congratulations on behalf of the UN for the inaugural SIDS Internet Governance Forum. It is of course, the occasion for the first Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, and that too deserves our congratulations. The youth are the future. They are the ones who are going to be shaping our digital future. So it's only befitting that we take them into our discussions, we invite them into our deliberations on the digital transformation. It's no coincidence that when the SIDS first came into being, it was the UN Conference on Environment and Development that was taking place in 1992. SIDS today are at the forefront of the planet's struggle with climate change. They are also at the forefront of the planet's struggle with natural disasters. They are far-flung. The populations are sometimes very sparse, and distance can be a forbidding factor in terms of regular day-to-day life, not to speak of economic activity or social activity. However, SIDS are rising to the challenge, and digital technologies are playing a very important role in reinforcing resilience and bringing the SIDS together regionally across the 3 regions, and also together with the rest of the globe in ways more than one. The internet governance discussion has been with us for a while. When the IGF was set up over 2003-2005, when the first World Summit on the Information Society took place, there was a lot of expectation that this would bring us together. This would catalyze global collaboration on digital technologies. And this expectation has only grown with time as we move from the ICTs era to the digital era, where data and data analytics and artificial intelligence are playing a greater role. There's been big progress made on internet connectivity overall. COVID has been a boost. Despite the tragedy, it has boosted internet connectivity. And our latest estimates are that internet penetration in the SIDS has crossed 63.5%. This exceeds the world average by a small margin. However, there are a lot of disparities within the SIDS member states. The top 11 SIDS member states have achieved more than 90% broadband mobile population coverage. And this is affordable. This is affordable connectivity with data prices less than 2% of per capita gross national income. Yet many SIDS countries lag behind. And some have an average internet penetration rate of only 25% or so. This means that 3 out of 4 people do not have access to the internet. And those who do have to pay a high cost for internet connectivity, sometimes as high as 10% of per capita GNI. Of course, there are many reasons for this. There's lack of competition, there are market constraints, scattered populations across multiple distant islands, but this is a formidable barrier that we need to address urgently. Apart from connectivity, there is also a challenge with regard to human capacity, the ability to use the experience on the internet in meaningful ways to advance education, to advance innovation and research, and also a challenge related to content. Many SIDS countries are often content takers. They are not able to contribute local content to the global dialogue, to the global conversations on different issues. The Honorable Minister who spoke before me mentioned the need to preserve the unique culture of the SIDS countries, and generating more digital content, whether it's digital twinning programs or other initiatives, it should remain a priority. As infrastructure expands, as connectivity improves, as affordability improves, digital awareness, digital literacy, human capacity have to go up side by side. Otherwise, there will be significant constraints to moving up the value chain in the digital economy and reaching goals such as the one set by Fiji in having the digital economy equal the tourism economy by 2030. The digital transformation requires new ways of thinking about governance. It also requires that we be more inclusive in terms of the governance discussion. Traditional governance forums have often struggled to open their doors, to open their discussions to multi-stakeholder communities. And this is where the IGF has a distinct advantage. It is a networked institution. It has 120 plus regional chapters, and new chapters are being created all the time, as we are witnessing today. So this is an asset that the IGF community has. The IGF community is also closer to the context, closer to what is happening on the ground, both the exciting opportunity side of digital technologies, but also some of the issues around misuse, the abuse of human rights, and the undermining of human agency and human choice. So the community can play an important role in bringing these issues into international deliberations, intergovernmental or multi-stakeholder. Recently, the UN Secretary General has taken an initiative to set up a high-level leadership panel for the IGF. The idea is to bring more legitimacy, more attention to the work of the IGF, to help prepare the priorities and programs for IGF meetings, and in general to bring a degree of political value add to the discussions at the IGF. I think the expert discussion must be accompanied by this political perspective if we are to start bringing digital technologies to the forefront of the international agenda. So I invite all participants in the IGF deliberations, to pay attention to this, to participate in the work that is unfolding before us. Another important development is that this year, the IGF will move to Africa. So I thank the government of Ethiopia for hosting the IGF this year. It's important that all regions be involved in internet governance issues, in digital cooperation matters, and the fact that the IGF moves to Africa this year and next year to Japan in Asia is reassuring in the sense of bringing more regional perspectives, more diverse views, and more diverse players into the internet governance discussion. Lastly, I like to take this opportunity to invite the participants and the SIDS IGF in particular to consider contributing to the Global Digital Compact. The Secretary General has called for a Summit of the Future, and as part of the preparations for the Summit of the Future, a digital track is under construction. So there's an open call for inputs in the context of the digital track so that we can put together a high-level document, a global compact on digital issues, focusing both on the opportunity, but also on the challenge. What are our shared principles? What are the shared approaches that should guide our action as we build an open, secure, free, and inclusive digital future for all? I thank you for your attention, and I wish the meeting all success.
Yeah. Tell me when we all. Thank you so much to our esteemed speakers for that discussion. Yes, you're here for the first ever SIDS IGF, and we're having an amazing time. For all the information that's been given to us so far, we're really enjoying it. How about you, Nia?
We're having a wonderful time.
Yeah, so I'm here with Nia. She's actually going to be giving me some information and also asking me some questions. So, Nia, how's things?
Things are great. We actually thought at the CTU that since we have you here, one of our regional superstars, that we will capitalize on the opportunity. So over the last day and a half, we've been talking a lot about Caribbean Internet Governance Forums, Youth Internet Governance Forums, and more specifically today, SIDS Internet Governance Forums. We've been hearing a lot of technical terms, a lot of acronyms, a lot of things about policies and frameworks, but essentially they are guiding principles and ideals to govern behavior and the utility of the internet. Tell me about what you think about it and how those ideas have impacted your scope of work and your career.
The interesting thing about this is I learned quite a lot about internet governance over the today and yesterday, and something that really stood out to me was the impact of internet governance on human rights, media freedom, and just understanding your fundamental rights as a creator, for example, because as a general content creator, that's not something that you probably would have experienced before, understood the values of having internet governance or how important internet governance is, just being a general YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok creator. So it's been great. It's been very enlightening for me.
I'm happy to hear that. So we've been hearing a lot of presenters and speakers talk about the pandemic being a catalyst for mass migration into the digital space. So apart from it encouraging digitization, I know it was quite disruptive, particularly for industry like yours. How were you able to pivot during that period?
So my brand and just my general business is centered around the entertainment industry. And yeah, for entertainers, and I'm sure this would be relative to many different countries, not just Trinidad and Tobago, for a creator and a media personality or even just an entertainment entity, it was quite a big change.
Yes.
Because the entertainment industry thrives on people and thrives on events, and all of those things were shut down, particularly in Trinidad and Tobago. So getting that opportunity to find a new space was, I'm sure, not just difficult for myself, but for a lot of people, and we had to find a way to pivot.
Yes.
So pivoting was key. I think especially at the beginning of the pandemic, trying to find a way to maneuver throughout the digital world, finding a space, finding your space, your demographic, and figuring out exactly how to push your brand forward throughout a time when obviously people were losing jobs, losing lives. So it was really just about finding your identity within that digital space.
But do you think that during that period where we had this mass migration of persons onto digital platforms, you were able to capitalize on a wider audience?
Definitely. I think from a personal experience, my numbers grew significantly during the pandemic. And pre-pandemic, I mean, I'm very grateful for that. But just being able to invest the time and see the returns being almost instantaneous throughout that space of time through the pandemic was remarkable to me, you know. So yeah, I definitely think that not only myself, but a lot of other Caribbean creators would have been able to join new platforms like TikTok. TikTok blew up really huge during the pandemic.
It did.
In the Caribbean, especially. It was big before in other parts of the world, but in the Caribbean, people really started focusing in on TikTok, for example. And now we have so many new creators that have come out of the pandemic. So yeah, I think that the digital space gave people the opportunity to grow audiences during the pandemic.
So there was a silver lining to the pandemic.
Definitely.
What about, you are such a huge content creator on multiple platforms and your audience is very varied in terms of demographics, age groups, genders, even nationalities. What are some of the challenges that you have to navigate around when using these platforms?
I think the biggest deterrent for a lot of Caribbean creators is the fact that monetization is not really readily available for creators in our region. You'd find on certain platforms, for example, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, we can't monetize, whereas people from around the world are able to monetize their platforms. There are people who are actually making a full-on living by being content creators.
Yes, that is correct.
There are people who have left their conventional jobs and are now doing social media full-time. And I think that, like myself, I do social media pretty much almost full-time, and I'm not able to fully monetize it. So even with the growth of my numbers and fan base and followers, I can't monetize on Instagram right now, for example, Facebook especially, because they don't allow us to, in our region, monetize. So that I think is a major issue that we face.
Do you think those challenges, particularly as persons are trying to diversify and maybe look at it to build a career, so they are going to have some measure of return and monetization for their investment? Your time is an investment. Your content that you created is an investment. Do you think that that challenge is going to hinder or discourage young creators or Caribbean creators from evolving or getting more utility out of these digital spaces?
Definitely, because when you look at the general climate of content creators and that sphere and that world in the Caribbean, it's very different from, let's just say, an American creative or online creative, because you're unable to monetize, one. Two, when it comes to companies, for example, maybe agencies, corporate world, accepting and using content creators in the Caribbean, I think we are very far behind.
Yes.
So I think during the pandemic, a lot of companies were forced to use content creators, and they moved away from conventional advertising
and marketing.
So from radio to television, all the conventional forms. Now people were pivoting to using social media influencers, finding ways to push their products online, because you couldn't go anywhere. So the only way that you could be seen is online. So I think we are very far behind when it comes to those things in the Caribbean, but I think if we're able to set up a system that allows content creators to fully make a living online in the Caribbean, then the youth will jump on it and they will definitely be a part of it.
Well, that's definitely something for us to consider at our next policy forum. But let me be devil's advocate for a second. So typically, the larger countries that we're referring to who are able to monetize these platforms, their audience is huge and far-reaching in terms of the number of users and what that means in terms of returns for the company, the connectivity, the devices, etc. Can it be said, or is there an argument that that type of monetization should be allowed in the Caribbean, even with such a smaller market? Or can we argue that a Trinidadian content creator is really a Caribbean content creator, or a Jamaican or a Bajan content creator is a Caribbean or West Indian content creator?
Right. So this is where I think the diaspora will have to come into play, because we are not just the Caribbean, located in the Caribbean. We have many people, just Caribbean diaspora around the world, who live in America, the UK, and some very far-reaching countries.
Yes.
So I think when we look at Caribbean content as being created, it's not just for people that live in the Caribbean, but it's for people from the diaspora that are living everywhere across the world, you know. So I think that's probably the best way to kind of say that we don't have necessarily only this amount of population that live in these said countries. We have the entire diaspora to feed. And I think they are hungry for their own types of content, which is Caribbean content.
And that's an excellent point, and that leads to the fact that the connectivity doesn't need you, and globalization, this whole digitization does not require you to be in a physical space to have access to the type of material and content that's being promoted and put out by our creatives.
Yes, so I mean, like, even just to clarify the point that I made about monetization and how it affects us in the Caribbean, I can give you an example from my own personal Facebook, for example. On Facebook, I'm unable to monetize because of the region that I'm currently located in. So every single time I apply for monetization and I get approved, let's just say if I'm traveling, if I'm in the US for a period of time, because recently I was in LA for some time and I got approved for monetization because of where I was and my location at that point in time.
Okay.
But as soon as I get back into the Caribbean, I lose it.
So it's the actual geographic location of your physical location that's preventing your monetization of your content?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What do you think from your perspective? Not a technical opinion, but what do you think as a person who is ingrained in the industry and produces this type of material and is subjected to navigating around these challenges? How would you recommend or suggest that these challenges be addressed?
I think this is where internet governance definitely comes into play, and this is where what I've learned over the past 2 days would definitely be applied now.
Yes.
And I think this is where the governing bodies have to come in and actually mediate between content creators in the Caribbean and these platforms, these social media platforms, because I think that's the only way that we'll be able to progress and find some sort of medium for us to get monetization.
What about, apart from just the regular content creators that people think, your Instagram, your TikTok, you do a lot of fantastic mixes and videos and stuff that you post up, what about the streaming of cultural events, our carnivals, our Tobago Heritage Days, that type? Do you think that, as you said, the diaspora, do you think that there's an audience for that, and that can also help the Caribbean get some sort of wider audience?
I definitely think so. I mean, I could use the example of music. That's like the example of Afrobeats, for example. Most of the people in the world now are listening and consuming Afrobeats.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And that was a genre that probably would have been considered niche at some point for that region. But getting the opportunity to be on large platforms that have large audiences would have led to people being able to listen to these artists, consume their music, and fall in love with it, to the point where these artists are able to collaborate with international big-named artists who are mainstream top 40 artists, and now that music is charting, for example. And I think that just shows that people are intrigued by other cultures. They're willing to listen to other people's music, take in the food, the culture, travel, and especially during the pandemic, since people couldn't go anywhere, they were definitely looking forward to being able to move again and visit the world and take in the world, what the world has to offer. So I think that people would love to be able to listen to Caribbean music, for example, or just consume our content, see what Carnival is like from a virtual point of view, and that's the beauty of a virtual platform, being able to experience somebody else's culture without actually having to travel or go there. So I think there's definitely a space for it where people would love to consume Caribbean culture and content, and not just people from the diaspora or people who are Caribbean, but people who are intrigued by the Caribbean.
Yes, I agree fully. And I know we've had a lot of local artists who have taken soca to the world, and we can probably take it wider, to a wider audience. There are quite a number of youth. I know we spent yesterday interacting with a lot of our youth participants. There are quite a number of youth now who are very interested in these types of platforms and becoming creators themselves in many different ways. Given your very successful history, and you also started at a very young age, what advice would you give to them, particularly in this post-pandemic, highly digitalized world?
It's a question I'm asked pretty often, but I'd expand on it and say that brand development is key. I think just arbitrarily posting content really isn't going to get you where you'd like to be. I think consistency is key, and brand development. So if you're able to really narrow in on who you are as an individual, what your brand represents, if both of them intersect at some point, and just actually finding certain attributes that your audience will relate to, and being as authentic as possible, because I know that for a fact that audiences are able to tell if you aren't authentic. They can pick it up, and people like content that they could relate to, enjoyable content, and especially in this day and age, positive content is always great too. So narrowing in on your brand development, and then consistently posting. You can't see results without having a proper posting schedule, finding ways to get your content out there, collaborating with other content creators. I think that's the best way to reach a larger audience in a faster space of time.
I mean, it's great advice, and you make it look quite easy. But what about, how do they balance? So for example, what about someone who is trying to figure out what their identity is, build their brand, but they want to maintain popularity and gain popularity, but at the same time appeal to a wider audience. So they want to be able to appeal to youth, teenagers, maybe families, maybe adults. How do they straddle those?
I always say this, and I tell this to everybody that I speak to, especially new content creators: the internet is forever. The internet is forever. Yeah. So I probably wouldn't advise you using the internet as your way or platform to figure out yourself or your life. Obviously, you kind of have to traverse that world.
Yes.
The virtual world is existent now, so you have no choice. But at the same time, I think really finding a way to be as authentic as possible is really what is going to be key. So I guess really narrowing in on who you are currently as an individual, rather than trying to find your space in the virtual world.
Okay. And before we wrap up, just one quick question. You have been with us for almost the last 2 days. Given all of the discussions and the conversations that we've been having, and all of the information that you have absorbed, what do you think the youth going forward would want to hear about? What kind of topics, what kind of conversations, what would benefit them? What do you think they would be interested in?
Something that myself and Ultrasimo mentioned earlier with Mr. Rodney was the safety of individuals online. And I think that's something that's very important, us understanding how we can be safe in a virtual world. The best way to keep safe on social media platforms, just general social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, not just with internet usage on a whole, but finding a way to be safe online, and what are our rights as content creators. Because a lot of Caribbean content creators, for example, I think are unaware of their rights when it comes to intellectual property, for example, and they don't know about the ownership of their own content. So I think that's something that we would definitely like to hear more about. And I think just also understanding the aspect of the monetization, figuring out ways for us as content creators in the Caribbean and the diaspora to make a living or earn a living off of social media and its counterparts.
Okay, and one quick follow-up question. When we talk about being safe online, now there are various facets to that. Are we talking about the safe use of the internet? Are we talking about how to use the various platforms? Are we talking about psychological harm? Are we talking about maybe any sort of mental health disorders that may come from just that type of lack of human interaction, too much usage? What exactly do you mean?
So I think it's multifaceted. To speak about the last point that you made, which is the mental health impact of social media. Social media can be very negative at times. And I think a lot of people don't even fully understand how social media impacts them as an individual. And your mental health, especially in today's climate, mental health is very important. We place a lot of emphasis on it, and that's great. But I don't think a lot of people understand just how just scrolling through your feed could affect your mood that day.
Yes, definitely.
Or how it affects your overall self-esteem or your ability to perform just daily functions. I've seen it with numerous people where they have to take breaks from social media because it's consuming them as on a holistic level. So I think that's one aspect for sure, really understanding how to navigate through your social media accounts and knowing that you have to balance your time in the real world and the virtual world.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I think that for sure is part of the security aspect. And then also certain apps would do location services. So if you look at Instagram recently, I think in their new update launched a feature which could precisely locate you. So I know they can tell your exact location where you are at this exact moment unless you turn it off on your settings on your phone, for example. Snapchat as well. Snapchat has had numerous issues with people being able to see your actual location on a map. So things like that, I think, are really important for people to be aware of, especially the youth, because you don't know. As in, if you're unaware that these features exist, then you won't know how to turn them off.
And you won't know how to protect yourself.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes. So really learning how to protect yourself in the virtual world, and then also understanding how the concept of location marketing works, as in target marketing. I'm sure a lot of people, you probably would have seen this, numerous people make videos on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, where they're talking about, is it weird that I was talking about this today and all of a sudden
all the time, all the time, yes.
And sometimes people ask, is my phone listening to me? So simple things like that, you know, really understanding how this target marketing works, as in you will Google a country, for example, and then all of a sudden ads on how to get to this country start popping up, and
flight deals.
Like flight deals and hotels to stay in. And I think a lot of younger people don't understand how it works, how the system works.
That's true.
I think things like that would really help.
Okay, that's some fantastic ideas. Thank you. And promise, very last question. As you discussed it a couple of seconds ago, do you think that content creators and creatives who put that type of information out there, you spoke about the mental impact that it can have on persons just scrolling through their feed on a daily basis, do you think that there's some onus and some responsibility on the content creator in terms of what type of material they put out there in regard to the impact it may have on the viewer?
I absolutely agree. Yes, I think that's very true. I can give an example of certain music artists. I know, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Cardi B at a point in time said that she doesn't create content for children, but children do consume her content.
So she defines her audience.
But she said at the end of the day, parents shouldn't be upset with her for the fact that their kids are consuming her content, because she never made it for them.
And that goes back to what you were talking about, online safety, because there's also a responsibility of the parent to monitor the utility of the internet.
Agreed, yeah. And each content creator has their own space and type of content that they posit and that they would love and that they would have as authentic to them.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of a weird space, because as a content creator, staying true to yourself, you have to create the content that comes naturally to you, things that you want, the type of audience that you want. But obviously, by extension, youth consume social media. 80% of social media users are the youth.
Yes.
So in that case, youth are going to be consuming your content regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
So you do, to extent, have a responsibility to create content that is, I see, somewhat positive. I think in today's world, we have so many negative things that come from the general news that being able to find a place for people to log onto a page, onto a channel, on your YouTube channel, on your Instagram Reels, just to find some sort of positivity or some sort of happiness or joy.
Something to make them smile.
Yeah, I think that's important. So I think as a content creator, you do have a responsibility to your audience and the general audiences to give some sort of positive content that doesn't only negatively affect your audience, especially setting unrealistic beauty standards, for example, you know.
Oh, yes.
I think that's something that a lot of people face difficulties with, because most of the large name influencers, call names like Kim Kardashian, for example, and many others like that, they would set what people would call unrealistic beauty standards. So and that in turn causes so many issues with just kids.
Yes, and their development. Yes.
Yeah, generally. So I think, yeah, you do have a responsibility. At the same time, yes, you are allowed as a content creator to create what comes naturally to you, what you love, but you should be mindful.
It's a balance. Yes.
You have to be mindful of your audience, yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, DJ Anna, for taking the time to answer some of our questions.
Thank you so much, Nia, for having me. And guys, yes, it's actually time for us to take a coffee break. We're going to take a 30-minute coffee break. Remember yesterday's fun? Well, are you ready to challenge yourself with a word scramble? We're going to play another game, so definitely check it out. And while the word scramble seems to have our attendees stumped, the quiz has found its winner. So I gotta say congratulations going out to Erica P. Harris. She won herself a $100 Amazon gift card. And the word scramble prize is still up for grabs, guys. So find the letters hidden in the virtual booths, hint, hint, to form the word and win. The game will be open shortly for 10 minutes, but I'm sure you guys don't need that long. So we're going to see who's going to be the first to find all the letters and form the word. The first person to correctly submit the word this time is going to win a US $50 Amazon gift card. So good luck and happy playing. We'll catch you guys very soon when we resume after our coffee break.
Recording stopped.
Welcome back, folks. I'm DJ Anna, your host, and we're diving into our final panel for today, where we discuss and examine the intersections between internet and the environment. I now invite our moderator, Sheri Lagakali from Fiji, to take the floor. Sheri, on to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Bulavinaka, Maloelele. As Anna has mentioned, I am from Fiji, but I am currently in Tonga, visiting with the Saba community here in Tonga. And this session, I know our speakers are surprised. You should have seen my colleague Selu Kauvaka from Tonga, who's had to rush off to Sydney, and it's 5:30 in the morning over there in Sydney. She is not able to connect. And what a time to be discussing internet and environment, having these experiences of having difficulty hopping onto this session this morning. Small island developing states, yes, we have internet everywhere, but too many platforms can complicate things for us. And what better way to start off this session with our speakers? We have Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill, from the UN Tech Envoy. Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill, thank you so much for coming on to this session after being a keynote speaker from the other session. We appreciate having you today. We also have Mr. Riad Meddeb from UNDP. And we also have Sylvia Cardena. Sylvia, I know it's very early over there in Brisbane. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to follow the order of the sessions today. But before I start, I did have a note from Selu about this session from a Tonga perspective, because this was supposed to be, we all know about the volcano in Tonga. We all know how the internet went down, the cable went down, everything was shut down for a month. And so when I asked Selu for an update this morning, her comments were post-tsunami events and pre-COVID in Tonga, we realized the importance of the internet communications and all, the importance to have a backup for your internet to the island and infrastructure. ICT community in the Pacific around the globe assisting in every way was the best part, because that's what brought us hope. So on behalf of Selu, thank you for joining this session. Also, thank you to everybody who came together in the community to get Tonga back online in January. Let's get started with this session. So Mr. Amandeep Singh, I'll hand this over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to participate in this deep dive into the sustainability issue, environment, and the internet. Maybe just a few remarks to set the stage, and perhaps then in the second round we can pick up a couple of the more important themes. Obviously, digital technologies have both a positive impact and a negative impact on the environment. We are familiar with the problem of e-waste. We're also familiar with the huge amounts of energy that's needed to run data servers around the world. So as more users connect onto the internet, as more content goes around the internet, we require more and more data storage capacity, and these obviously require power to be run. And with some emerging technologies, the distributed ledger technologies, cryptocurrencies, the requirements for power have gone up. So we have to now become very mindful of the sustainability of digital technologies going forward. What's the impact? By various measures, the blockchain world pulls in as much electricity as is needed by Ukraine or Argentina every year. So these are no longer small figures. So we need to start thinking about how we can be more sustainable in terms of our digital choices. The other side of the ledger is the opportunity. So this is where digital, by taking away the need for us to be physically together, to travel from one place to another, by bringing us together through digital platforms, can take away some of the carbon intensive ways of traveling and working together. And it can also bring in new insights through data. So if we are able to, for instance, take more detailed stock of what kind of packaging materials are being used, what is being recycled, then we can reflect that back into the supply chain. So the supply chains can be made more sustainable if there is more visibility throughout the supply chain of what is the environment impact and what can be reused, for instance. Overall, I think there's an opportunity for a move away from a linear economic model, extraction from the ground of inputs that go into final products, and then these final products are just thrown away as waste, to more of a circular economic model where there is recycling and there is reduction in waste, there is reuse, and data and the Internet of Things plays an important role there. So there is these two sides, and beyond this is the value that data and artificial intelligence in general can bring to our understanding of the environment through modeling of various effects, through modeling of what may happen to infrastructure, for instance, in the case of rise in sea levels, and what can be done to protect our population. So there are these other aspects of digital and environment that we can perhaps get into later on in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill. We will move on to Mr. Riad Meddeb. Riad is from the Global Center on Technology, Innovation and Sustainability Development and the Senior Principal Advisor for Small Island Developing States with the UNDP. Riad, I believe you have a presentation. You may proceed. We can see your presentation.
Ula Sherry, thank you very much. Let me put it on presentation mode. Very good. Thank you very much, colleagues. For me, as we just heard, we focus today on the linkages between internet and the environment. The internet has been a phenomenal force for people and the planet, providing communication, connectivity, culture, and commerce. As a recovering economist, my team are very familiar with my talking about externalities. And the internet has a very exciting positive externalities and multiplier effect. Getting people online is often good in itself. And the more people online, the increased potential the internet offers. And that is very important. In the past decade, global internet use for more than doubled from 2.18 billion users at the start of 2012 to 4.95 billion at the start of 2022. Last year, for the first time, more than half of the world population were using mobile internet. Our friend at our Word in Data have some fantastic statistics on internet use. For example, on any day in the last 5 years, there were an average 640,000 people coming online for the first time. That's 27,000 people every hour, but there is still more to do. The number of people who remain connected to the internet has now dropped below 3 billion people for the first time, but the inequity is stark. And 1 in 4 people across lower and middle income countries are still unaware of even the existence of mobile internet. It also may be becoming more unaffordable to get online in the first place. In many of those countries, internet-enabled handset and data become less affordable due to the pandemic. The negative consequences to the internet are also often disproportionately fed by lower income countries and marginalized communities, particularly the small island developing states. Returning to externalities, the internet has a number of this negative multiplier effect, and many of this have serious consequences on the environment. It is very difficult to impact the emissions and environmental impact of the internet. It depends on devices, connection, resolution, time of the day, and much more besides. And these numbers are changing all the time, with both improvement in efficiency, but also increases in usage and changes in use behavior. I'd like to walk you through what have been considering as the internet value chain from infrastructure to individuals. We start with foundational internet infrastructure, wired and wireless connectivity. We think cities and town, and you know for the SIDS, 65% of the total population of small island developing states is urban. All around the world, explore how to increase the efficiency of digital infrastructure rollout. For example, DIG wants policies that improve the coordination of fiber optic installation can also reduce the emissions caused by traffic congestion. For wireless connectivity, switching away from diesel generators could have significant impact. We're seeing mobile network operators such as Cellcard in Cambodia increasingly using renewable energy across their network infrastructure. Cloud technology can also reduce emissions by leveraging computing resources elsewhere that can be powered by renewable energy. But data centers consume incredible amount of energy and require a lot of equipment and water cooling and other technologies. We're seeing positive effort, including Microsoft's commitment to be carbon negative by 2030, but more could be done. This includes providing granular data on cloud IT emission to consumer and policymakers. Some providers have started down this path, but there need to be combined effort across the whole industry. And we need an accelerated drive towards renewable energy to power cloud infrastructure. We also need to look at how we are leveraging internet-driven innovations such as big data and AI. The carbon footprint of training a single artificial intelligence system can be considerable. One study noted that the computing power of training a relatively basic model emitted as much as 284 tons of carbon dioxide, 5 times the lifetime emission of the average car. Increasing transparency can be important here. I saw one academic suggested AI researcher publish energy usage alongside their academic papers. We could also look to improve method and processes relating to emerging technologies. This could include exploring more elegant ways to explore data, not just huge neural network or other massive models. For example, making some proprietary data open to avoid the need to rerun modeling could be a very exciting and impactful development. We also need to focus on the end users, as this presents a number of challenges and opportunities. First is looking at the internet-enabled devices that people are using and their impact on the environment. Priorities like tackling e-waste. We're seeing more interest in the right to repair and similar initiatives around the world. In 2019, 53.6 million tons of e-waste was generated globally, but in the same year, only 17.4% of e-waste was recycled. The type of internet products and services being used are also worth exploring. Increased usage of delivery and platform economy apps during the pandemic saw considerable increase in plastic waste that accompanied those deliveries. Emerging initiatives like the metaverse could reduce travel and emissions, but also increase data usage and the associated environmental impact I just mentioned. We may even need to encourage responsible digital consumption. The same way that we turn light off when we leave a room could also provide an insight into how we could shift our digital behavior. One study from Yale University noted that if 70 million streaming subscribers lowered the quality of their video, it could reduce monthly greenhouse gas emission by up 3.5 million tons. That will be the equivalent eliminating 6% of monthly coal consumption in the United States, according to the study. But we can even look further upstream at how we're building the digital economy. In digital, we are driven by user-centered design, ensuring that the products and services we build are founded on the needs, realities, and aspiration of users. Co-design, testing, and iterating are key components of this. But should we also start thinking more about environment-centered design, building products and services that mitigate or outright avoid negative impact on the environment? As an example, more and more digital platforms employ continuous scrolling and additive design. Tools like autoplay, recommended articles, and web page without any end. This encourages us to spend more time on platforms, which in turn leads to greater data usage and likely increase emissions. We may see some interesting differentiation happening here. There's one online magazine whose website is driven by solar power. And because of this, it sometimes goes offline. Some websites are also trailing open hours, reducing 24/7 availability, demand, and emissions. But we need to ensure that this limitation don't affect the abilities and opportunities of the most marginalized to participate in the digital economy. Website with closing time shouldn't include those in other time zones, like here, from purchasing key goods. And access to information should be founded on resilient and reliable infrastructure. And there will also growing roles of policymaker here. One particular example became clear as I was drafting this talk. Finding reliable public and recent data regarding the environmental impact of digital products and services is very difficult. Should we be requiring companies to publish and share more? In closing, I'd like to return to the internet value chain and briefly mention our work at UNDP. We are working across a number of SIDS on foundational infrastructure, from underlying connectivity to leveraging Internet of Things and drones to improve data-driven decision-making. We are collaborating closely with the private sector to drive sustainable implementation of emerging technologies and to drive new development in key catalysts such as renewable energy. And throughout, we're driven by inclusion, from shaping basic digital skills so everyone can benefit from the potential of the internet, to supporting local innovator and entrepreneur to design the products and services that their community need the most. And this may yet be the services that respond to the environmental threats of the SIDS. As I mentioned earlier, the internet has delivered enormous positive impact to many. And we need to continue on this trajectory. Digital, data, and other technologies are crucial tools for the development of the SIDS and for tackling key challenges such as climate change. The internet is a powerful driver of human development around the world, including to achieve the SDGs. We need the internet for decision-making, policy-making, and developing and delivering products and services to improve lives and livelihood. We need the internet to help us to save the planet, but we also need to ensure that the internet doesn't have the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Riad. What a great presentation on e-wastages and renewable energy and just trying to be sustainable. And they have some questions, but I'd like to wait until we have our speaker. We have another speaker that's trying to join, that's having difficulty joining. If she joins later, we will have her, but otherwise we'll move straight on to our next speaker, who is Sylvia Cadena. Sylvia is the head of programs with APNIC Foundations. If Sylvia, over to you.
Thank you, dear Sherry. My pleasure to join you today. I am Sylvia Cadena. I'm the head of programs and partnerships for the APNIC Foundation. I'm based in Brisbane, Australia, but I am from Colombia, so I'm very happy to join a meeting that is in the time zone of where my blood is. Although it's very early for me, it's lovely to be here. I have shared with Sherry a few links that I am going to go through during my brief conversation. And I hope that those links also can be shared with the participants. I don't have access to the event platform, so I can't really see who is participating, but I hope that is something useful. Well, APNIC is the Asia Pacific Network Information Center. We allocate the IP addresses and ISN numbers that all network operators need to connect to the internet. Is one of the 5 RARs in the system that supports the capacity that is required to operate and administer the networks that allow all of these services on the internet to work. I always say that we are at the very boring, very boring level of infrastructure development, and but without IP numbers and addresses, the internet doesn't do the magic that we see it doing. So, you can have all the physical infrastructure, like the submarine cables and the satellites, but these protocols that allow interoperability and interconnection are not only software that interconnects and devices that interconnects, but it also reflects the culture of the people that build the internet. It shows it was built based on trust and collaboration and cooperation. And as those are words that have kind of loose meaning in these recent years, it is very important to always remember how important it is for the future of the internet that collaboration and across different industries, across the multi-stakeholder spectrum actually happens. So the APNIC established its foundation in 2016. Is the APNIC Foundation is centered on supporting building capacity around what the internet has to offer. We support network engineers, cybersecurity professionals, and internet governance specialists across a number of projects and programs in infrastructure inclusion and knowledge, all related to the technical infrastructure that is required. One of the things that the foundation and APNIC has centered a lot of effort is in growth is in the APNIC Academy that allows it is an online access and face-to-face access and delivery to courses that are related to network infrastructure, so DNS, DNSSEC, routing, IPv6, and a few other courses. You can explore the academy there. We were very lucky that all of this was running before COVID, and the transition to only online it wasn't that, it was hard, but not as hard as in other organizations that didn't have platforms like this available at the time. So it has, now we are back to travel, I guess, and part of that includes continuing the efforts of hybrid events. In the next 3 to 4 weeks, we are going to be in Singapore for the APNIC 54 conference. And that is a hybrid event where a lot of this information from the academy is shared. And there is a 3 days workshop prior to that, where many of our folks, friends from the Pacific, will be joining us in these capacity building efforts. Going to Tonga, talking about Tonga, we at the foundation have supported the work of the University of Auckland. Ulrich Speidel has been working tremendously on trying to understand how to improve interconnectivity in the Pacific Islands. And a lot of his work has been around TCP/IP tunneling. So after the earthquake in Tonga, he wrote a series of blog articles for the APNIC blog that I'm sharing just the most recent one that is talking about the options that you have in some of the comments that Sherry shared at the beginning that Selu sent for this event about the importance of redundancy in these connections. And in a lot of cases, there are decisions for small island countries where redundancy means just a really ridiculous amount of money to be paid for something that apparently is not needed. But again, as with everything related to redundancy, you don't know how much you need it until you don't have it, right? So it is one of those things that is a principle of network management and administration that is part of the courses that is discussed within the IPNIC Academy and the experts that support all of that process. As part of that support, the IPNIC sent a very small router to Tonga to help out interconnect one of the islands that had lost access. And some of those efforts about sending a piece of equipment that is already configured and you just not need to plug it in and recover some of the access are, as I was mentioning before, part of that super important element of the internet community, which is collaboration and support for others, right? So this shared learning, this shared experience that has bring so many benefits to many of us. However, as more businesses are developed, different cultures are clashing. And it's important to just, discuss what the core values of the internet are and why it is so important to talk about interoperability and in collaboration. The foundation does support grants and awards over the years. And last year, we started discussing with Ian Peter the establishment of an internet and the environment grants in his name. He was very sick at the time, and he passed away, and we established the internet and the environment grants on his name. The winners of those grants will be announced in the next few weeks, and on the screen you can see the list. If you can scroll up just so that people know, you can see what you have. Here is the page for, thank you, Sherry. Here is the page for all the grant recipients and reports that are available. IGF has supported over 100 projects in the 15 years that has been operating. And the Ian Peter grants are something very close to our heart, deeply honoring a good friend that supported internet and the environment discussions over the years, and that wrote a lot about our role in preserving the environment, and many of the things that Riad mentioned in his presentation would be something that he, I think if he was here, he would be very honored and share a lot of the things that you have mentioned, Riad. So we will share with this community also the results of the internet and the environment grants in the next few weeks, so that you can see the portfolio of projects that we are supporting. The ones for 2021 are 22 projects that received about $1.4 million in total that were allocated, and we are doing a similar amount. We are also supporting IPv6 deployment grants, and those announcements will also come up pretty soon. A little bit close to $1 million that is going to be allocated for that, including one project for Tonga Cable Corporation that is coming up. It's not, the announcement is not there yet. We haven't signed the contract, so I can't give you much details about that, but is a part of our support to the Pacific Islands and their establishment of bigger and better infrastructure for the citizens they serve. We also collaborated in the Eco-Internet Index that Asia supported. If that index is an initial approach about how the community could look at the data that is available about the environment and in different ways that data articulates. So I'm going to share. So thank you, Sherry. So this, if you scroll down a little bit, so that document that was prepared is it is a pilot study that looks at different data that is coming from different angles and trying to identify what the carbon footprint of the internet is and how we could find a better way of understanding. So this was a pilot, and we are really looking forward to work with Asia into making the index actually a reality, to have the rest of the information available as you know, as a proper, let's say, software that allows people to interact with the data and make decisions based on what they can see from different angles of data that are coming about internet infrastructure. And to finally, I wanted to give a shout out to the IGF, the Internet Governance Forum. I had the pleasure to serve on the multi-stakeholder advisory group in the MAC for 3 years, in part of the creation of the policy network on meaningful access, which is still active. And the last year, during the IGF intersectional work, there was a policy network on the environment. I wasn't part of that one, but it has very interesting discussions, and a document that was produced for the IGF in Poland that can also support understanding about different angles that people relate to this issue around internet and the environment. And I believe that there are, you know, the environmentalist angle, the angle about let's do business as usual, but try to pollute less. And there are others that are just designing technologies that are supposed to reduce our carbon footprint, as Riad mentioned, you know, don't damage the environment that the internet is trying to interconnect. So I know that Amandeep is included in a lot of the work and supporting the work of the IGF. I'm very glad to see you after many years, and I think it's a very important space to be able to discuss from different angles in a multi-stakeholder approach, in a level playing field, to try and figure out, okay, what's next. And it is a lot of uncharted territory as we move into more clarity, let's say, on conflicting agendas, and how are we going to balance, connect the unconnected, right? And bring everyone in and have equality over the internet, and at the same time, taking care of the environment and do it in a proper manner. So there is a lot of work to be done, but we need to keep the conversations going. And in that spirit, I will give the floor back to Sherry. Hopefully we have some time for questions and discussion with the other members of the panel. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Sherry.
Well, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you to our other speakers, Mr. Amandeep, Gill, and Riad. Just in the middle of the presentations today, I remembered that in Fiji, and this is not to carry my Fiji banner that high, but last year our utilities, and so our water and electricity, and I don't think it would have been an aim. Maybe there might have been just a part of it to reduce our carbon. Started shifting away from printing our water bills and our electricity bills to encouraging people to sign up online and access the portals online to get your electricity bill. You could enter your account number and you could get your bill. And also they started working on sending text messages for what your bill was as reminders. And it was just last week my bank emailed me to say we will not be printing out those statements anymore. Please sign up for the portal. They had already started moving everybody to the mobile platforms, and then from the mobile platforms with the apps, you can get your summaries and your statements from there. Before it was on a request basis, you'd have to go and pay the bank to print it out for you, but now they're making it fully accessible. And so small steps, baby steps, where we're slowly getting there. I think one of the things that really caught my attention today, Riad, was from your presentation on renewable energy. And data centers, they take up a lot of electricity. They're using up a lot of energy. we have to think about, I think our Pacific Islands, we're really proud of our data centers, that we've been able to bring servers across all the way from whichever side of the world to bring it and host our systems here within, in some places within office, some out of sight. And just that thought around, having spent all that money to get these servers, now thinking about the cost of, it is to the environment. Just wondering if, we could start a discussion from there when Sylvia says, what next? What we have to convince our Pacific Island nations, our small island developing states. It always comes down to cost, but there must be a way that we could convince them with that reminder of, yes, we're safeguarding our environment. Then there are some cost-effective options. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. On data and internet, or data and energy in the Pacific. I know that, for example, Palau, Tonga are using different platform with big data, energy, and AI platform that helping them to evaluate where they could invest for energy transition. And that is very important. That is essential, is a question of survival in the small island developing states, because most of them are importing the energy. And with the triple C crisis that we have now, the cost of energy just increasing, it is not sustainable. So the AI, the internet, the data really is helping now to transition and to accelerate the transition. This is what we need. The main problem is there are different ways of finding technologies that not impact the environment. And that's what Sylvia also was saying, how we can think together in a way of when we design together, taking into account the environment. That is the next step for me. It's not against what we have. No, we have it. We know it has a positive impact. And as I said, externalities as an economist, positive externalities, negative externalities, how we can reduce the maximum of negative externalities by co-designing. And that's where I like to push in terms of next steps.
Thank you, Riad. And it's, I think you've mentioned it, and also Sylvia has mentioned it. We need to have these discussions, and we have need to have more of these discussions. And the more that Pacific Island countries, small island developing states start thinking along those lines. Mr. Amandeep Singh, Gill, you earlier in your keynote in the opening, you mentioned something. You mentioned the Global Digital Compact, and a lot of our small island developing states that are hearing this for the first time, coming to from our common agenda, wondering if you would be okay to say a few things about that and how important it is for us to put in the input, because it's still time for to put in our input.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a call for public inputs that's going to be open till the end of the year. So there is time, and I really invite inputs from SIDS so that their perspectives and priorities can be taken into account. So what's the Global Digital Compact? We do not have a treaty for the internet or for digital issues. And that's very unlikely because the digital world is multi-stakeholder and it operates at different levels. And those levels are governed by different communities, and that's good. But we do need some alignment in terms of approaches, in terms of principles, in terms of priorities when it comes to digital issues. And this is both because of the potential for misuse. We heard in one of the chats earlier how young people could be tracked physically through some of these apps. So that puts them in physical danger. Human rights can be violated. Social media platforms can be used for fomenting hatred against a particular community. And then AI and big data can actually perpetuate some of the inequalities in our societies today. It can create new asymmetries of power. So we need to address all those potential misuses. Take the environment space. There is a lot of potential for digital technologies to help address our environmental problems. So we need a global alignment of principles, approaches, and priorities. And the international community has been building up to this through the high-level panel on digital cooperation that the Secretary General set up in 2018, then the roadmap on digital cooperation, and now through our common agenda, which was presented at the 75th anniversary of the UN. As part of the common agenda, a Summit of the Future has been called for, and that's where the Global Digital Compact opted. It's an important document. It's also a document for future generations. Youth in particular should look at it and from a perspective of making sure that their voices are taken into account, so their future is at stake. And if we do not take action today in this manner across these different commons, whether it's digital commons or our environmental commons, then their future is in danger. So this is the urgency about this document. And it would be great to have youth from all three regions of the SIDS to contribute their voices to the compact.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. Sylvia, as you mentioned, as a former MAG and, small island developing states, even Pacific Island countries, I am very new to the MAG, but just the wealth of information and the expertise that is coming from there and the discussions, I feel like we don't have enough Pacific input. We don't have enough small island developing states input. Did you want to have some comments around that?
Thanks, Sherry. Yes, I think that the problem with, or how I see it, the problem that I see with the global conversations around internet development, that have been going on for 2 decades, and how they are culminating in the processes that Amandeep was so kind to refer to. I think the most important part is this awareness that the technology keeps changing, and that the communities that are in small island states are trying, it's like a breathless race to try to stay informed and on top of things to be able to join in and participate. But the scale of the solution that will work in, in the US or a mainland country, connections in Australia, where I am, for example, will make very little, if no sense, in the Pacific Island nations, where the geography and the number of people that are actually living in these islands do not, to many, justify such investments. So is this conversation at the IGF level also that has been going on for quite some time, also in many of the alliances that are happening, kind of in parallel around spectrum, around data, around artificial intelligence, and the many efforts that different organizations have done in this multi-stakeholder cooperation space are about discussing about incentives and changes to the industry as such for investing in a more rich ecosystem of organizations that are contributing to this interconnection that we are seeking. So, looking at not concentrating the source of connectivity into the one mobile company or the one ISP that was, previous model. It also means that these small ISPs that are emerging require incentives to be able to cope with costs and the challenges that they have when they actually are serving very small populations, and the cost is exactly the same as if they were serving millions, right? So if you are developing a network that could support 1 million people, but you are in a country where you only have 10,000 citizens, how that match to each other so that you can justify such investments. So these kind of incentives and just looking at the numbers and what is required, not only to deploy this technology, but to maintain it and operate it, and how much effort is required to renew the technology that is out there and to make sure that the people that are managing, it doesn't matter how much automatization you can put into a network, you always need a network engineer that actually knows what's going on. Otherwise, you have the funny case of Facebook locking themselves out of their own office because they automatize things and they lose control of the access to the building. So, there are common sense approaches that, as my grandmother used to say, common sense is the less common of the senses. So some of these discussions make a lot of sense, but with different agendas and competing against each other, finding that really common sense that connects us is so difficult. And I really think that this constant stick against the companies that are deploying these technologies and deploying the services needs to be managed in a way that encourages them to improve and participate in the discussion. I honestly think that there is no much point on having a session discussing everything that is going wrong with social media, for example, and not having any social media platforms participating in that discussion. So that effort of bringing in the input of the people that we are criticizing, the input of the companies that we are not in agreement with, is super important. In the case of the Pacific Island nations, they are included in this global approach of how services are delivered, how services and tools are delivered. And one thing that I have found is that culturally, they are so different from the rest of Asia Pacific, right? So a lot of the issues that these technologies bring in culturally are very difficult for them to accept. So it is something that can't be really overlooked. So one of the conversations with dear friends in Vanuatu was when they were starting the process for the Vanuatu computer emergency response team, the Vanuatu CERT, was about looking at not the Singapore CERT or the Hong Kong CERT or the New Zealand CERT that is $30 million in infrastructure, but looking at what is fit for purpose and what is culturally appropriate, is what it makes sense for what you are doing in your own context, and make the best effort so that your community benefits from everything. But it's really in those incentives, in understanding the importance of collaboration, where we probably be able to crack that nut and keep moving forward. I think that all of these processes, like the Digital Global Compact, the Global Digital, whatever, is very important. But we just need to make sure that they are beyond paper, right? Beyond just the conversation, but that clear action items, clear calls for action, and evidence of what people are doing based in these discussions is bringing to the floor. And I've seen a lot of change in the technical organizations that are supporting internet development, the companies that are developing services and tools, as well as the companies that are working in interconnection. So, I think that there is hope. We need to balance the doom and gloom with what is coming in terms of the positive efforts that many people are doing, and personally hang on to it, because that's the only way that we are going to really connect the unconnected and be able to understand what the needs are of the rest of the people, and really get to hold each other and support each other as we should, and to keep this, not only the planet alive, but also our own cultures and our own societies. So I hope that is not, it seems really is with dread, let's say, that we look at the numbers and the statistics about the damage that we're doing, We just need to, I think, hang on to the creative power of people and the collaboration, how those innovations can help us solve the problems that we have and give space, incentives, and financial support to be able to deploy those solutions at scale and to just get in the right track. We still have time, so we need to just hang on to it and get a sense of urgency, as Riad said and Amandeep said, to make sure that we get to the other end. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sylvia. Some important things you said: financial support, spaces, incentives, and because you mentioned Vanuatu CERT, and I'm here in Tonga, I want to shout out to Tonga CERT. I know APNIC and APNIC Foundation has supported the development of the CERTs in the region and the relationships and the discussions that are ongoing. Next week at the APT meeting, we're having Vanuatu IGF collaborating with the CERTs, and we've also recently had SAMCERT from Samoa being just launching. Riad, I know that you have another meeting, so I don't want to hold you up longer. I wanted to know if there was anything that you wanted to add onto Mr. Amandeep Singh's discussion, or what Sylvia's intervention, or any final thoughts before I let you go. And I don't want to hold everybody else, because I know that it is pretty early morning on some parts of the world as well.
I just want to say one thing. I really like the fact that when Sylvia mentioned that we need to bring the social media actors, all the one that could negatively impact the environment, putting them together. I know that Amandeep in his previous functions has done bringing all those commissions from the Secretary General. They discuss all those issues. I think that the idea of co-designing, co-working together is the most important thing. We need to work for one thing, is for the planet and the people, and for responding to our sustainable development goals. This is top priority for the SIDS. It has to respond to the last year and a half of the Samoa pathway. And this thinking that we have now about the internet environment in the SIDS is very important in the preparation of the next development pathway. Is tomorrow. And this discussion is essential. This is very important to take into account for the next priorities of the Samoa pathway, which should be aligned to the 2030 agenda. Thank you very much. And I apologize, I have another meeting starting very soon. And thank you very much. Thank you, Amandeep. Thank you, Sylvia. And thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Riad. We won't hold you back, and I'll also try not to hold Mr. Amandeep and Sylvia back as well. So I just want to check quickly with our CTU team. Do we have any questions from the audience before we try to conclude? There was a question in the chat asking for the link to provide the feedback. Because I was already looking at the Global Digital Compact, the submissions link was already there, and I put it through the chat.
Thank you, Sherry. You were faster than me.
So apparently there are no other questions. Wow. Can we just jump right into some final thoughts? And let's try and conclude early, since we all have a lot of things to do. And especially, I'm very mindful of Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill being here for the session before this as well. So let's start with Riad, because you have to go. No, you've already said something, but final thoughts, and then Sylvia, and then Mr. Gill to conclude.
For me, we need internet for decision making, policy making, and delivering product and services to improve life and livelihood at the end. This is the reality of the SIDS. The problem of the SIDS now, we have to go to reskilling most of the manpower who was working only on the tourism sector, which was the key sector of the life and fishery, and try to think what could be the new job. And internet is helping them, for example, on new urban farming and digital farming. And that is very important, essential. But let's think out what could be the new technology that will not impact the climate. At the same time, we will import less food, So we reduce the impact on the climate, but we will be producing locally, but using certain numbers of technology will impact also the life. It means that we are obliged to accelerate the energy transition. And that's one key element of the small island developing state. Thank you.
Thank you, Riad. We will let you go. Sylvia, over to you.
Thanks, Sherry. Well, I guess for me, in terms of concluding remarks, I think that just to have the internet, environment front and center in the discussions that are around internet development and the development of the internet are super important. Just to, as many other issues across the discussions have been defined as cross-cutting, the gender divide, the divide between the South and the North, knowledge access, multilingualism. There are so many topics and issues of discussion that are for different communities, that is more important than the other. I think we all kind of agree that without planet Earth, we will not be able to do any of that. So if we could work our way through convincing and persuading communities that are engaged in all of these processes to reflect from their own perspective how they see the environment playing in their own context, their views and their experiences could contribute to what's next in the future, and for others also to understand what is the situation of the communities that they are connecting. For people living in the mainland, understanding island life is very difficult. It's not something that it's not a holiday, right? And many people just have that stereotype, let's say. So trying to think how you work and how you live and how you grow as a community in those contexts is something that requires a lot of empathy and a lot of conversations. So we just need to keep those lines open. And I hope that processes like this dialogue here, the Digital Compact, the IGF coming up in Africa later in the year, and the many different national and regional IGF forums allow for these conversations to happen. It is, we can start understanding each other when we talk. So I encourage people to ask questions in the next forum that people attend and join on a Zoom call. Please, put your questions in the chat and make your views heard. This is what it is for. So over to you, Sherry. Thank you very much for having me, and really enjoy the panel today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Always a pleasure having you. Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill, because I am also on the IGF MAG, and I'm also involved in the APR IGF program for that's next month. And so it is an honor for us to have you here on the Small Island Developing States IGF before you go into all these other discussions. And we've, for as Pacific Island countries, we've always been lost in the Asia, in the AP, the Asia part of Asia Pacific. And so to have a platform like this for Small Island Developing States where we could have a real discussion around, like today, energy and sustainability and, our carbon footprints and just ways, to do things better. Really, really excited to have you, and keen to hear your final thoughts on this discussion.
My pleasure. And I remember that when we started the consultations for the UNSG's high-level panel on digital cooperation, our first official event was in a small island developing state. So, and I'm very glad that it's starting the same way in my new role. There was a meeting in St. John's a couple of weeks ago on the Wadadli Action Platform. So it's interesting to speak about education there and environment here. All our sustainable development challenges are interrelated, and technology and innovation play a key role. So whether it's environment, education, health, agriculture, food security, the green transition, They can all be enabled by, progress can be enabled by digital technologies. But we have to get it right. It's not just tech alone, it's people, it's processes, the analog interface of digital technologies. Governance is very, very important. That's why IGF is such an important institution. And at the Addis Ababa IGF, the discussion would be centered around 5 main themes for the Global Digital Compact. So I'm glad that we are building up this foundation for action. I agree with Sylvia that there are enough words out there. Maybe we need to put them together in a more actionable way. And then this office has been created. The Secretary General has taken the initiative to create this office so that we can accelerate progress. We can move from words to action. I would just like to end by saying that they say small is beautiful, but small can also be mighty. And the SIDS who've not contributed to the negative externalities that Riad spoke about as an economist, but they've actually created positive externalities for us with the culture, with the connect with nature. And now they should be part of the problem solving. They should be part of the governance of these commons so that their human rights, their dignity, their agency is fully respected. And in fact, they play their role in solving the problems that others have created for them. So very, very happy to join Sylvia, Riad, and you, Sherry, at this panel, and all the very best for the SIDS IGF.
Thank you, everyone. Hopefully this is the first of many discussions, and one day we could have this discussion face to face. I am, because this is the last of the sessions, I'm going to hand this time over to Nigel and the CTU team. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a lovely day, afternoon, evening on your end.
Thank you, Sherry. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Sherry, and to our esteemed panelists, thank you for that discussion. And that's a wrap for day 1 of the SIDS Internet Governance Forum, and that's not nearly all of what we have in store for you guys. So we're going to see you all tomorrow at 9 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time or 1 p.m. Universal Time for day 2 of the SIDS Internet Governance Forum. I'm DJ Anna signing out. See you guys tomorrow.